I handed her the keys that still smelled like cedar and lemon polish. My house. Our memories. She didn't hug me. Didn't smile. Just said, "It's official now. You can use the guest bathroom, but please be respectful." 3 weeks later, an envelope slid under my door. Typed. Itemized. Signed. $18.75. Bathroom usage fee. Line 3. Toilet paper consumption. Above average. I didn't cry. Didn't knock. Just folded the paper in half and placed it under my teacup. That's fine. The judge can talk now. I used to start my mornings before the birds. The house was quiet then. Honest quiet, not the kind that follows slammed doors. The kettle would sing at exactly 5:45. I never needed an alarm. The old oak outside my window rustled like a gentle nudge. Chamomile. 1 sugar. Same chipped blue mug from 1984. Not because I had no others, but because it fit my hands just right. My husband, Thomas, used to say the kitchen smiled when I walked in. I believed him. It had been just me for the last 11 years. But not a sad kind of alone. A peaceful kind. I'd fill the feeders, tend the roses, hum an old tune. Sometimes I'd talk to the furniture. They never talked back, but they listened. My daughter, Elise, used to visit every few weeks. Quick hello, quicker goodbye. Busy woman. Career, marriage, child. After her divorce, she called more. Soft voice. Needing a place to land. I offered her my home before she even asked. She didn't cry. She thanked me, but in that brisk, practical way. "I'll make sure everything's handled legally, Mom. Just sign where it says." It was a Tuesday. Gray sky. My roses were blooming pale yellow that week. I handed her the deed. She kissed my cheek like someone closing a business deal. Not cruel. Just efficient. She moved in fast. Boxes everywhere. A cleaning crew. New light bulbs, new locks. She took the master bedroom. Said I'd be more comfortable in the guest suite, fewer stairs. I nodded. Of course. She replaced the curtains in the kitchen. Took down the hand-painted calendar Thomas made me the year before he passed. "It's just old paper, Mom. We can digitize all this." Digitize. Like you could shrink 42 years into a folder and rename it archive. I didn't fight it. I told myself change was good. She brought her daughter, Lila, too. Lila was sweet mostly. Quiet like me. But even she began to mimic her mother's tone. Clipped. Efficient. Polite like a stranger. Meals became rushed. Microwaved. Measured. No one asked for seconds. One night I made my famous corn chowder, the one Thomas loved. Elise tasted it, gave a thin smile, and said, "A little too much cream. We're watching cholesterol now." I ate alone that night. In the sunroom. The chair still rocked the way Thomas used to do it when he read aloud. No one sat with me. No one asked about my day. My quilting supplies were boxed for storage. Her office needed the space, she said. The roses outside began to wilt. I hadn't touched them in weeks. The new schedule ruled everything. Groceries on Thursdays. Laundry access by text request. A shared digital calendar Elise posted on the fridge. My name wasn't on it. There was even a rule for the thermostat. 68 by day, 64 by night. Efficiency, she called it. I started sleeping in socks. The guest bathroom became mine. It had no window, no warmth. Still had one of those stiff hotel-like mats with rubber backing. I placed a rose-shaped soap dish in there. The next day, it was gone. Elise prefers neutral scents, Lila whispered. She gets migraines. So I stopped lighting candles. Stopped humming. Stopped being someone who took up space. One afternoon, I passed the mirror and barely recognized the woman. Neat bun. No lipstick. Eyes pulled back, searching for a voice. I sat at the kitchen table with my old tea mug. They had new mugs now. White ones with geometric handles. I watched the steam curl. Watched the shadows on the tile shift with the late sun. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Just absent. They weren't cruel. Not exactly. But they had no use for me. And somehow, that was worse. The house still looked the same from the outside. White siding, blue shutters, porch swing that creaked like a memory. But inside, It had become a museum curated by people who had forgotten what the exhibits meant. Sometimes at night, I'd open my drawer and run my fingers along the old photo. Thomas holding Elise on her 4th birthday. The way she looked at him. The way she used to look at me. Now she barely looked at all. One night, I left my tea mug in the sink. The next morning it was gone. I asked. Elise said it cracked. Thrown out. Just like that. I checked the trash. It wasn't there. It wasn't cracked. It just didn't match the new kitchen. I was never truly lonely. Just quietly replaced. And I told myself, it's fine. It's her house now. I should be grateful. But something in the walls whispered. You built this. You kept it warm. You don't owe them your silence. Not yet. But soon. Very soon. It came on a Monday. Overcast. Breezeless. The kind of day that forgets what season it is. I was folding towels in the guest room. Mine now officially. They were warm. Lavender scented. I'd started using fabric softener again, just to remember who I used to be. Then I saw it. An envelope. White. Neat. Slid halfway under my door. No handwriting. Just a printed label. To, non-resident guest, room 3B. Room 3B. This was my home. There weren't letters or numbers when I lived here. Just names. Just love. I picked it up with 2 fingers. Held it like it might burn. Inside was a sheet. 1 page. No greeting. No note. Just lines. Amounts. Cold language. Invoice. Guest facility usage. March 1st to March 22nd. Line 1, towel laundering, shared linen closet. $4.50. Line 2, toilet paper and hygiene supplies, $6.75. Line 3, water consumption estimate daily use, $5. Line 4, extended access privileges, 3+ uses per day, $2.50. Total, $18.75. Due upon receipt. My hands didn't shake. I waited for anger. It didn't come. Instead, there was stillness. Sharp. Precise. Like the moment a needle breaks the skin before pain begins. I placed the invoice on the nightstand. Right beside the glass bird Thomas bought me in 1992. The one that caught afternoon light and turned it into something holy. I walked to the bathroom. Guest bathroom, they called it. The soap was Elise's. Labeled and locked in a cabinet. I looked at the hand towel I had folded last Thursday. Still perfectly creased. Still mine. I traced the edge of the sink. A small chip on the porcelain I remembered making when Lila was 6 and playing pirates with the plunger. She laughed for 10 minutes that day. Now she barely looked up from her screen. The invoice said non-resident. The guest book on the shelf said welcome family. I stared at both. Let them argue with each other in silence. Then I noticed it. A line I had skimmed before. Small font. Bottom margin. For legal clarification of occupancy status, refer to document, Appendix E. I didn't know what Appendix E was. But something inside me knew what it meant. They had redefined me. Redrafted my name into a category. From mother to occupant. From homeowner to temporary use. I sat down on the edge of the bed. The ticking clock on the wall seemed louder now. I thought of all the things I'd never billed her for. Diapers. Braces. Piano lessons she never finished. Tears after her first heartbreak. Meals I made when she couldn't move from bed. Socks I folded. Secrets I kept. I never sent an invoice. I just called it motherhood. She called it consumption. Above average usage. There was a pen on the side table. I picked it up, flipped the invoice, wrote in the corner, "You're welcome." Then folded it neatly. Once. Placed it under my teacup. The same way I used to place notes in her lunchbox. With hearts and little sun drawings. That was the moment. The exact one. Not the paper. Not the $18.75. It was the word. Non-resident. That was the first time I realized. She hadn't just taken my house. She'd reclassified my existence. I looked across the hallway, past the bathroom, to the entry shelf. The old brass mailbox tag still sat there. M. Lane 132 Oak Ridge. Thomas had screwed it on himself, said. So no matter what, The world knows who holds this house. I never took it down. They never noticed it was still there. Now I stared at it. Like it had a secret to tell. Like it had one more job to do. The room was silent. But everything inside me was screaming. The invoice was a slap. But the truth had been whispering long before it shouted. There were signs. Small ones. Thin as paper. Easy to fold. Easier to ignore. The first one? My casserole. Chicken and mushroom, her favorite in high school. Bubbled just right. Golden edges. I left it on the counter with a note. Warm if you're hungry. Love, Mom. It came back the next morning. Untouched. Still cold. Still covered. No thank you. No lie about being full. Just silence. As if the gesture hadn't happened. I told myself maybe she was tired. Maybe it was the mushrooms. She used to like mushrooms. Next was the quilt. She found it in a trunk while reorganizing. One I'd stitched by hand the year her daughter was born. Tiny bears in each corner. Took me 3 months. She held it up with 2 fingers like it was dusty mail. Cute, she said. But I don't think it goes with the new color scheme. She folded it sharply. Put it in the garage without looking at me. I smiled. Said nothing. Told myself she was being practical. She always liked clean lines. I started texting her little things. Groceries that were missing. Questions about utilities. Notes about the new alarm system I couldn't figure out. She read them. Didn't reply. Once, I asked if I could move my old trunk back upstairs. It had Thomas's letters in it. She texted back. Let's keep storage downstairs. Trying to reduce clutter. Clutter. Love notes. 42 years. I didn't respond. The laundry room became locked. She said Lila had left the dryer on once and she couldn't take risks with the electric bill. I nodded. Of course. She told me to text before using it. Only between 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. I started hand-washing my clothes at night. Hung them in the bathtub with clothespins. Quiet. Efficient. Invisible. My birthday came. March 9th. She didn't forget. She just said, Happy birthday, Mom. On her way to a Zoom call. No card. No cake. No hug. Lila gave me a quick nod, then closed her door. I sat in the kitchen with a half cup of tea. Lit one of the candles she hadn't thrown away yet. A lemon one. Whispered to myself. Happy birthday, sweetheart. It was the first time I'd ever said it alone. To myself. One day, I walked into the living room and found my photo albums. Stacked neatly. Labeled Archive Donate. In blue marker. I opened the top one. There we were. Elise at 5. In a red sweater. Standing beside a snowman we built. Thomas behind her. Laughing. I was on the side, arms open wide. Like I was catching them both. Now the album was shut. Labeled for removal. I carried it back to my room. Didn't say a word. I tried giving her a bracelet once. Silver. Worn. Thomas gave it to me on our 20th. I thought she'd want it. For history. For blood. She turned it in her palm. Thanks, she said. But I don't really wear these anymore. I watched her set it down on the hall table. By her keys. Next to a half-used grocery list. She never picked it up again. Then came the comment. The one that didn't need to be loud to land. She was on the phone. I wasn't supposed to hear. Talking to someone. Maybe her ex. Maybe a friend. She said. Yeah, it's just temporary. Until I get full rights sorted. She's technically still here. But you know how that is. Old people don't want to let go. Old people. Not my mother. Not she's still adjusting. Just old. Just in the way. Later that week I cooked again. Spaghetti this time. Garlic bread. A tiny salad. They came home late. With takeout. Lila had bubble tea. Elise had her usual. Salmon and kale. No dressing. They brushed past the kitchen. Didn't see the table. Didn't smell the food. I scraped the plates quietly into the trash. Poured myself wine I hadn't had in months. Sat at the table. No one joined me. No one noticed. I used to be her safety net. Her mother. Her place to land. Now I was the wallpaper. Not torn, just ignored. Too familiar to appreciate. Too quiet to fear. But it was there. in the air between us. She had taken the house. But it wasn't about the house. It was the way she looked through me now. Like I was part of the furniture. Like I belonged to the past, not her present. I remembered the night Thomas passed. She curled up next to me in bed, all grown, sobbing like she was 5 again. "Don't leave me too," she whispered. I held her all night. Now she walked past me. Eyes on her screen. Keys in hand. Door closing softly behind her. It wasn't the invoice that broke me. It was everything before it. The little cuts. The cold smiles. The empty dinners. It was the way she replaced memories with rules. Replaced mother with occupant. And still, I made excuses. Maybe she was tired. Maybe the divorce hardened her. Maybe she didn't mean it. But even maybe starts to rot after a while. Even grace has its edge. And mine was coming. Quietly. Firmly. With both feet planted on the floor I used to own. I didn't sleep that night. The invoice sat under my teacup like a dare. I didn't move it. Didn't tear it. Didn't even look at it again. It was enough just knowing it was there. A receipt. For my humiliation. The next morning I tried to clean. That used to help. Scrubbing meant control. Bleach meant erasure. But nothing moved. The sponge sat dry in my hand. The sink already gleamed. There was nothing left to fix. At least not on the surface. I wandered through the rooms. Every one of them unfamiliar now. Even the walls seemed like they had been painted in a different language. Cold white. Flat. Nothing to say. I passed her office. Door open. New bookshelf. Labeled bins. A diffuser puffing peppermint air. My old sewing chair sat in the corner. Repainted. Gray. It used to be sunflower yellow. Thomas had built it. Rounded edges so I wouldn't bruise my knees. Now it was just gray. Muted. Like me. I went back to my room, the guest room. Where the sunlight hit differently. Where the carpet didn't quite reach the corners. I opened the drawer. Took out the photo. Me, Thomas, and Elise. Christmas morning 1991. She's holding a doll. One hand on my knee. Big toothy grin. I was younger then. Tired. But smiling like my whole life was sitting on that rug. I remembered a night when Elise was 16. She had failed her driving test. Cried for 2 hours in her room. I sat outside her door. Didn't knock. Just waited until she opened it. She leaned into me like a child. "Don't tell Dad," I cried. I didn't. I just held her. Let her sob into my shoulder. Now I couldn't even ask to do laundry without permission. I was a liability. A cost center. A line on her monthly budget. That afternoon, I walked toward the hallway closet. I wanted my old cardigan. The blue one with wooden buttons. I hadn't worn it in months. The closet was locked. I jiggled the handle, gently at first. Then harder. Nothing. Elise had changed the knob. Installed a code lock. Without a word. Without warning. I stepped back. Leaned against the wall. Eyes closed. Not angry. Just erased. That's when it happened. The collapse. Quiet. Like snow sliding off a roof. I slid to the floor. Back against drywall I once painted with Elise when she was 12. She spilled mint green all over the baseboard. We laughed until our stomachs hurt. Now my legs folded beneath me. Hands in my lap. No sound. I sat there for what felt like hours. Maybe minutes. I watched shadows stretch along the carpet. Dinner came and went. No one knocked. I listened to the clinking of takeout boxes. Heard Lila ask if she could order extra spring rolls. Heard Elise say, "Sure, it's not like anyone's using the kitchen." A small thud. A drawer closing. A soft chuckle from the living room. Normal sounds. Domestic. But to me, each one was a funeral bell. When the house finally hushed, I stood. Walked to the trash can in the laundry hall. Lifted the lid. It was still there. The bracelet. Silver. Worn. Still curved to my wrist. She hadn't even thrown it away properly. Just dropped it in with yesterday's mail and a tissue. I pulled it out. Held it. It felt colder than I remembered. Lighter. Like it didn't belong to anyone anymore. I walked outside barefoot. Night air. Summer thick. The porch creaked under my steps. I stood by the roses. Most had died. Yellowed. Wilted. One stem bent low like it had been stepped on. I didn't cry. Instead, I dropped the bracelet into the flower bed. Let it disappear into soil I once tilled with love. One word slipped out. Empty. The moon was sharp that night. Too white. Too clean. Like someone watching me with no feeling at all. I sat in the rocking chair. The one Thomas used. Back when his knees were strong. Back when Elise would run to him after school. It moved slowly. A tired rhythm. Like a breath learning how to leave the body. I closed my eyes. Just listened. To the silence. To the betrayal humming beneath every clean surface. To my own voice whispering beneath the grief. Forgotten. Used. Enough. Have you ever remembered something small? Just when everything felt like it was falling apart? And that's when I knew. This wasn't my breaking point. It was my turning point. But first, I had to fall all the way down. Just once. So I could remember how it felt. To stand up. I didn't scream. Didn't shout. Didn't call a friend or slam a door. Instead I made tea. Earl Grey this time. No sugar. I sat in the same chair as always, facing the front window. Light poured in like it had something to say. But I wasn't listening to the house anymore. I was listening to myself. She left early that morning. Jogging shoes. Wireless earbuds. Protein shake in one hand, car keys in the other. I watched her walk down the driveway. Like a woman who believed everything belonged to her. Even time. Lila slept in. She always did. That gave me just enough time. I opened the safe deposit drawer I had hidden in the guest room wall. Not new. Just forgotten. Inside was a small blue folder. Bank information. An account Thomas and I had opened the year Elise left for college. We called it Quiet Years Fund. Just a little nest egg. We never touched it. But I did now. I went to the county records office that same afternoon. Signed in quietly. Waited my turn. I sat across from a man with silver hair and a kind mouth. I said, "My name was removed from the deed without full disclosure. I'd like to review my legal standing." He blinked. Then nodded. Then got to work. No fanfare. No scene. Just truth, one document at a time. Later that day, I walked into town. Stopped at the post office. Bought a new box. New key. New address. 2 blocks from the cottage I would later call home. But I didn't know that yet. All I knew was, I needed a mailbox where my name still meant something. When I got home, the house was loud again. Lila's music through the ceiling. Elise on speakerphone with someone from her bank. I moved through the kitchen like a shadow. One they no longer noticed. The silent scene came next. Not an argument. Not a line spoken. Just this. I walked to the hallway bulletin board. The one with the shared calendar, the Wi-Fi code, the fridge schedule. I pinned something beneath it. The envelope. The invoice. Folded in half. Underneath, one small handwritten line. I accept the charges. Then I stepped back. Deleted her contact from my phone. Tossed the key to the guest room in the trash. Then I turned. And went to the garage. Thomas's toolbox was still there. Dusty. Rusted shut. But I found what I needed. A screwdriver. I walked to the front porch. The brass nameplate still clung to the mailbox. M. Lane 132 Oak Ridge. I unscrewed it. Each turn of the wrist felt like breath coming back. The metal was warm in my hand. Heavy in a way that made me remember who I was. Inside, I placed it on my bed. Wrapped it in a towel. Tucked it into my suitcase. I didn't know where I was going yet. But I knew what was coming. She noticed nothing that night. Said nothing. Didn't ask why her copy of the invoice was pinned on the wall. Didn't ask where my phone charger had gone. Or why the mug I always used had disappeared from the cabinet. She was too busy. With her job. Her plans. Her next stage of control. I packed slowly over the next few days. Things that mattered. Things that hummed with memory. I didn't take much. Just what had heart. The quilt she tried to box. The photograph from Christmas '91. The bracelet from the trash. Not because I forgave her. But because it was mine. The final action came one morning when the house was still asleep. I left the spare key on the kitchen counter. Not in the center. Not with a note. Just barely visible. Easy to miss. Then I walked to the porch. Locked the door behind me, not for them. For me. And I didn't look back. I didn't slam the door. I just closed it, finally. Viewer prompt. Have you ever stayed quiet just to keep the peace? The air outside felt different. Not free, not yet. But honest. Like it had stopped apologizing for itself. I walked 3 blocks. No bags. Just the brass nameplate in my coat pocket. The only thing that still knew who I really was. That night, I didn't sleep in that house. And for the first time in months, I slept. No locks. No rules. No quiet accusations hidden in politeness. Just me. And silence. The kind that heals. 2 weeks passed before the letter came. Cream-colored. Thick paper. Stamped with the county seal. I opened it on the porch of the room I now rented above a florist shop. It smelled like lavender and old bricks. I thought it might be about the petition I filed to contest the deed transfer. Just another update. Another piece of red tape. But it wasn't that. It was worse. Notification of mortgage activity. Reverse lien agreement. Primary residence, 132 Oak Ridge. Borrower, Elise Lane. Borrower. Not owner. Not heir. She had borrowed against the house. Not to maintain it. Not to care for me. She had sold pieces of it for cash. While I was still living there. While she was charging me for toilet paper. The paper trembled in my hands. Not from anger. From shame. How deeply I had trusted her. How willingly I had closed my eyes. There were signatures at the bottom. One looked like mine. But it wasn't. Not truly. It was the signature stamp I kept in my old desk drawer. Used only for holiday cards, old-fashioned thank yous. She had taken it. Pressed it to legal paper. Turned it into consent. Forgery. Dressed up in daughterhood. I couldn't cry. Couldn't speak. I just sat with the paper in my lap. Watching the dust swirl in the sunlight. She hadn't just taken the house. She had taken my silence. And used it like a signature. She had made me complicit in my own erasure. And then billed me for the scraps. That night, I returned to the one thing I hadn't yet opened. The brass nameplate. Still wrapped in the dish towel. Still warm from the sun that hit my suitcase each morning. I turned it over. On the back, something I hadn't noticed before. Etched lightly in my husband's scratchy handwriting. For Margaret, who made this house a home. I pressed my thumb to the words. Tried to remember the day he wrote them. But all I could remember was Elise at 10. Carving her initials into the back of the porch railing. With a butter knife. While I begged her not to. She smiled then. She hasn't smiled like that in years. I needed to see the truth with my own eyes. So I went back. Not to the house. To the courthouse. I asked for access to the mortgage records. The clerk, a woman younger than Elise, blinked as she scrolled. Oh, this one's messy, she said. Then she printed 15 pages and handed them to me with both hands. Gentle like she knew. I sat on a bench outside, beneath a crooked tree. Read every word. She had signed months before I left. Had already received her first disbursement. Used the funds for renovation and debt recovery. I flipped through the expenses listed. Interior design consultant. A treadmill. Custom cabinetry. And one charge that stopped my breath cold. Legal retainer. Will revision and estate preclaiming. She had rewritten the will. Removed my medical power of attorney. Declared me financially in decline. All while I was folding her towels. Hand-washing my clothes. Smiling through every bite of cold silence. They didn't just forget me. They erased me. I walked aimlessly that day. Through neighborhoods I didn't know. Past dogs barking behind fences. Past front porches that still had wind chimes and hanging baskets. I found myself on a bench beside a duck pond. A mother with 2 toddlers was feeding them bits of bread. She smiled at me. I couldn't smile back. All I saw was the moment Elise stopped needing me. And started using me. That night, I opened the old photo box. The one I took with me when I left. There was one picture I hadn't looked at in years. Elise, age 4, asleep on Thomas's chest. I'm next to them, holding both of their hands. We look like a family. The kind I thought we'd always be. But even photos can lie. Even love can rot. I held that picture over the flame of a small candle. Not to burn it. Just to feel the heat. Just to understand what it means to be that close to destruction. And still choose grace. I tucked it back into the box. Closed the lid. The betrayal had many names. Forgery. Deceit. Inheritance theft. But none of those words touched the real wound. The truth was simpler. She didn't love me enough to protect me. She loved the idea of what I could give her. And when I stopped giving, she found ways to take. But I wasn't gone yet. I hadn't disappeared. I had proof now. Paper. Ink. Truth. And a nameplate that still remembered me. Even when my daughter no longer did. The house may not be mine on paper. But I built it. Brick by brick. Memory by memory. She might own the deed. But I held the foundation in my hands. And maybe, just maybe, she was about to feel what it meant to lose something she never truly earned. I didn't go back to court. Didn't file charges. Didn't sue for fraud. I could have. Every lawyer I spoke to said I had a case. But some wars don't need to be fought. They just need to be walked away from. Completely. Without looking back. I took the deed. Made one last visit to the title office. The clerk tilted her head when she read my request. You want to donate the property? I nodded. Didn't explain. Didn't offer my story. Just signed. Oak Ridge House, transferred in full to the Haven Women's Shelter. They didn't ask many questions. Just thanked me. And told me it would be used as transitional housing for mothers and children. That felt right. It wasn't revenge. It was redirection. Let Elise see what it means to take everything. And still end up with nothing. That same week, I moved into the small cottage by the river. 1 bedroom. Squeaky floors. Windows that opened too easily. But it was mine. Truly. Only mine. No shared calendars. No labeled towels. No closed closets. I brought very little with me. The Christmas photo. The old quilt. My mug. The one she said was cracked. Still whole. And the nameplate. The first morning there, I planted roses. Just 4. 1 for each decade of marriage. Yellow. Same as the one she let die. I wore Thomas's old flannel as I dug. His scent long gone, but the memory of warmth still stitched into the sleeves. It rained that night. Soft. Steady. A kind of baptism. I opened the windows. Let it wash the rooms with silence. In the morning, I sat at the kitchen table. No schedule. No rush. No one checking if I used too much water. Just the tea. Hot. Fragrant. Steam curled like a memory. I reached into my pocket. The brass nameplate. M. Lane, 132 Oak Ridge. I turned it over. Ran my fingers over Thomas's inscription. For Margaret, who made this house a home. That house was gone. But I wasn't. I'd carried the real home with me. Inside my hands. Inside my spine. Inside every quiet decision I'd made to stay. Until I finally chose to leave. I could have held on. Fought for the bricks. For the deed. For the illusion. But I chose peace. And that was louder than any courtroom ruling ever could be. Later that week, I walked into town. Past the courthouse. Past Elise's bank. Didn't stop. I had one errand left. The local library was hosting a community swap. People brought things they no longer needed. Traded. Released. Renewed. I walked up to the long folding table. Placed the brass nameplate gently in the middle. A woman smiled. Is this for trade? No, I said. Just for letting go. She didn't ask questions. Just nodded. Like she understood more than I said. On my way home I bought lavender. Not for the garden. For the windowsill. My mother used to place sprigs near the sink. Said the scent kept the bitterness out of the room. She was right. That night, I lit one candle. The lemon one Elise didn't want in the house. Watched it flicker. Not in mourning. Not in regret. But in quiet celebration. Would you have walked away or taken everything back? Elise texted the next day. Not to apologize. Not to ask how I was. Just, I got a notice. You gave the house away? I didn't respond. Didn't need to. My silence was no longer submission. It was decision. Later that week, I heard from the Haven. They sent a photo. A little boy about 7, standing in my old living room. Smiling. Holding a toy truck. The fireplace was lit. The windows open. The walls looked warmer. For the first time in years, the house felt alive again. I printed the photo. Framed it. Placed it on the windowsill. Beside my tea mug. Beside the lavender. I had nothing left of that house. But everything left of myself. And I was no longer waiting for her to remember who I was. I had remembered on my own. The knock came on a Wednesday. Late afternoon. Light spilling through the trees in slanted gold. The river humming behind the cottage like an old friend clearing its throat. I knew it was her. The knock was careful. Too polite. Too unsure. That's how guilt sounds when it arrives without permission. I didn't answer at first. Just sat by the open window, shelling peas into a bowl. The same way my mother used to. Soft rhythm. No rush. She knocked again. Then called out. Mom. It's me. I didn't move. Just listened. To the breeze. To the quiet bravery inside my chest. Finally I stood. Opened the door. Elise looked smaller than I remembered. Hair pulled back too tight. A pale line across her forehead where sunglasses had rested too long. Her eyes were rimmed red. I didn't speak. Just waited. She swallowed. I heard what you did. A pause. You gave the house away. Still I said nothing. She shifted her weight. Hands clutching the strap of her purse like a life raft. Why would you do that? Her voice cracked. We were going to figure it out. I didn't realize how far you were planning to go. Far. She had already taken me to the very edge. And now suddenly she thought we were close. I made mistakes, she said, eyes flicking past me, to the roses growing along the fence. You don't have to say it. I know. She stepped closer. One foot on the threshold. I'm in a bad spot, Mom. The bank, they're freezing things. Lila doesn't understand. I'm trying my best, but... Her voice dropped. I need somewhere to stay. Just for a little while. Somewhere to stay. I looked at her, not as my daughter, just as a woman, standing in the ruins she built with her own hands, asking me for shelter from a storm she caused. I could have let her in, could have reached for the part of me that still remembered her as a girl with scraped knees and bedtime fears. But that part had been evicted long ago, quietly, one invoice at a time. Behind me, the cottage was warm, lavender on the windowsill. Framed photo of the little boy smiling in what used to be my living room. My mug. My breath. My peace. Everything inside me whispered. This is yours now. I stepped outside. Closed the door gently behind me. Not locked. Just closed. We stood in the garden. Face to face. No roles left to play. I don't hate you, I said. She blinked. Tears brimming. I just don't belong to you anymore. She reached into her purse, pulled out a small box, held it. Oh, you. I knew what it was before I opened it. My bracelet. The one she'd tossed in the trash. Now polished. Tucked into velvet. Like that could undo the insult. I kept it, she whispered. No. She remembered it. That's different. I didn't take it. Didn't even look down. Just said. I gave that to the soil. It doesn't need to come back. She nodded. But didn't understand. I didn't know how to fix things, she said. I believed her. But it didn't matter. Some things aren't meant to be fixed. Just ended. Cleanly. Quietly. A breeze passed between us. It carried the scent of rosemary. And grief. I should have been better, she whispered. I gave her a soft smile. That kind that hurts more than fury ever could. Maybe. But I stopped waiting for that a long time ago. She stepped back, looked past me once more, then turned. No goodbye. Just her shoulders, hunched like memory, fading down the gravel path. I stood there until I couldn't hear her footsteps anymore. Only birds. And wind. And the peace she never understood. That night, she left a voicemail. I didn't check it. Just saw her name. And pressed delete. Viewer prompt. Do you believe quiet dignity is stronger than revenge? The next morning, I tended the roses. One bloom had opened overnight. Big. Golden. Perfect. I clipped it gently, placed it in a glass jar on the table, sat down beside it with my tea, not to prove anything, just because it was mine, and I had nothing left to defend. For a moment, I pitied her. Then I remembered who I was. Mornings are quiet now. Not the brittle kind. Not silence shaped like fear. Just soft. Lived-in. Whole. The cottage creaks when it breathes. The floors shift when the sun warms them. It feels like I belong to something again. And that something is me. The tea tastes different here. Same mug. Same brand. But in this place, I don't sip it to survive. I sip it to enjoy. No one watches the kettle. No one times the water. No one counts the teaspoons like pennies in a jar. The lavender by the window is in bloom now. Pale purple, tall, unapologetic. Even the bees are gentle here. I walk each morning along the river path. 3 turns to the right, 1 to the left. Past the willow that droops like it's listening. Past the bench where a boy reads comics out loud to the air. Sometimes I sit beside him. Say nothing. That's the kind of company I like best. I kept the photo from the Haven. The boy in my old living room. Grinning with that reckless joy only children carry. There's a new rug in the picture. Crayons on the coffee table. Fingerprints on the window. It's no longer my house. But it's finally a home again. Elise never came back after that afternoon. Not in person. 2 texts. 1 holiday card with only her name. No love, no mom. And 1 final email. I wish you'd given me the chance to fix it. I didn't reply. Not because I'm angry, but because I no longer need to explain the price of my peace. She lives in a condo now. I heard from someone at the market. Lost the car. Started working remote. Lila visits her father. Rarely calls. That's her story to carry. Not mine. I walk lighter these days. Not faster. Just freer. I plant things now. Tomatoes. Rosemary. Wildflowers with names I don't need to memorize to love. The bracelet sits on my bookshelf. Not as a wound. As a reminder. Of what I gave. Of what I reclaimed. Of what didn't break me. One afternoon, I found a piece of paper tucked in an old journal. I had written it years ago, maybe after Thomas passed. A single sentence. I hope someday she sees me as more than what I gave her. I read it. Sat with it. Then tore it in half. Because now I know. I don't need to be seen. I just need to be. There's a chair on the back porch. Wooden. Deep red. The one I found at a second-hand shop on a rainy day. It creaks when I sit in it. But it holds me. Without complaint. Without rules. It doesn't ask who I used to be. It just lets me rest. The garden has taken root. 4 rose bushes. 1 for each decade of love. 1 bloom lost to frost. Another blooming wild. They don't match. But they're alive. And no one asks them to explain themselves. Sometimes, I hear her voice in my head. Not cruel. Not bitter. Just distant. Like a song from another room I no longer walk into. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't pull. It just passes. And I let it. That's the thing about peace. It doesn't ask permission. It arrives quietly. Sits down in the middle of the wreckage. And says, we're done now. Some days I still think of the invoice. $18.75. Toilet paper. Water. That was the price of my final awakening. I never paid it. Not with cash. But I paid it in full with every inch of silence I gave. Before I chose myself. One morning, I walked down to the river. Nameplate in my coat pocket. Still warm from where I'd held it all these months. I stood on the wooden footbridge. Watched the water crawl past. Then let it go. The brass sank slowly. No splash. Just a quiet descent. Like something finally finding its place. The ripples faded. The sky didn't change. But I did. Do you believe you need permission to find peace? I came home. Sat in the red chair. Watched the wind move through the roses like fingers through hair. No one was waiting on me. No one needed me to explain where I had been. I drank my tea. Held the warm mug to my chest. Closed my eyes. And for the first time in years, I felt whole. Not because they remembered me, but because I remembered myself. I was never the guest. I was the foundation they built on. then tried to bury. And now, I'm the house they'll never own again.